This is India Wright. I am the founder and CEO of Intention Media, doing sports filmmaking and storytelling, and this is her table.
Now you see her.
You are magnificent!
Welcome to Her Table, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the badass women who are redefining the game. Join hosts Kate Foley and Megan Martinez as they unlock the secrets of success from the brightest female pioneers in the industry.
Welcome back to Her Table. We have another amazing episode for you today. I am so excited to have sports filmmaker and storyteller India Wright join us on the podcast today. India spent 7 years at NFL Media and has been nominated for multiple sports Emmys. And she is currently the founder and CEO of Intention Media, a female-led sports production company.
Not only is India her own boss, she is also a professor at the University of California, where she has been teaching journalism for the last year and a half. India has over 10 years of experience working in the sports media landscape. She has covered some of the biggest franchises in the Los Angeles Dodgers, Lakers, Clippers, Kings. I mean, the list goes on. And she even produces content for some of the biggest stages in the world, such as the Super Bowl, World Cup, and the Olympics.
I know, it's so incredible. India is not only a mentor to me, but a friend. I am so excited for our listeners to learn about India's story and how she has found success in the sports world. Let's get to it. India, pull up a chair at her table. Okay, India, you worked for NFL Network for 7 years. You teach at USC. You are now starting your own female production company. First, I want to dive into working for NFL Network. How did you get your foot in the door? I know a lot of women would love to have an opportunity to work there. So,
Is this how y'all met?
Yes,
NFL?
oh yeah, this is how
Okay,
I
so
met
y'all
India.
worked together before.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
Megan was very proactive, reached out, and
Love.
she was able to be on set actually in my last NFL feature that I directed, which
So
was
fun.
about women, which is really cool. So we can circle back to that. But
Yeah.
to answer your question, I went to school and I thought I wanted to be on air because even then felt like the only place where there was a place for women in sports was on air. And I was 8 years old watching football. I was raised by a single mother who was a badass in her own right. And Sundays were church, homework, and football. And one Sunday, a woman came on the screen and she looked like me. And I remember being like, telling my mom that day, I was like, I'm going to do that. That would be Melissa Stark, who I would then 19 years later work with at the NFL on NFL 360, and we would become colleagues. But I bring that up because it's the importance of representation, and we talk about it more than we ever have. And some of it is checking the boxes, but it is important because without that moment for me as a, 8-year-old young girl to see a woman that, looked like me, she was blonde and had my skin color, and to see that and be like, oh, I see myself in her. And that is what led me to then pursue this career. I think really shows the importance of representation. And so I went to school thinking I wanted to be on air, got to USC, had amazing opportunities, and just put my reel together and started sending it out. And Corpus Christi, Texas was calling, and Bakersfield. And I'm like Google imaging those. I'm like, I could do that. I could do that. And then, but it was just so funny, when you know yourself, you're like, I'm so motivated. I'm so driven. Why aren't I jumping at these opportunities? And while I was sending my reel out, I got a great opportunity at Spectrum Sportsnet working for the Dodgers and Lakers. And I got to start doing Backstage Dodgers and Backstage Lakers, which is, their long form storytelling, platform. And through there, I had the opportunity to learn about storytelling. And I started telling stories through sports. And it was just one of those things that clicked. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to tell stories in sports. For me, it felt so empowering to be able to have a voice and to put my voice into these stories and also to humanize these players that really everyone looks at on TV and they just glorify them and they all have a story and they're a lot like us. Then we realized so to have an opportunity to kind of humanize these big characters and these heroes and then to be able to find my voice through storytelling was something that I was like, this is what I'm passionate about. So all of that led to eventually an opportunity with the NFL. I was working on a project at a house for NFL, and I got in contact with Dallas Hitchcock, who runs our original content team at the NFL. And I was just like, do you need anyone on the inside? I want to come work in, for you guys. And he was like, actually, yeah, we do. It's a 7-month gig, which you are familiar with, the NFL. And a lot of sports, networks work on contracts. They don't have a lot of full-time positions. So it was 7 months on, 5 months off. And I was like, great. And I will say that, I was on my heels for the good first 3 years, just because, it's so fast-paced. the expectation, the standard is so high to deliver. And yeah, there was definitely an imposter syndrome. I was 23, 24 when I got there, and I'm flying all over the country, you know, telling stories for the National Football League, and it was an amazing opportunity. But yeah, I also had to work my ass off to make sure I showed that I was worth the opportunity. And so it was a lot of late nights in the edit bay, and yes, over preparing, because yes, I think we all know, obviously you women can share this, but it's like, yeah, you always feel like there's an extra magnifying glass on you as a woman. And yes, every set that I walked onto, and I've been on probably 300 sets, and I am technically, yes, I'm the one in charge, but they're all male, and they were usually older than me. So it was a very interesting dynamic having to get on set and be like, implement, yeah, my voice and my presence without being like, obviously belittling or degrading when you're working with men and yeah, people that are older than you. And so that was an interesting skill set that I had to like hone about, like, how do I infiltrate, influence, and yeah, have a presence, you know, in a room where I'm definitely the only woman and I am probably of the youngest age. But yeah, it was an amazing opportunity that eventually led me to starting, my own company.
It's so crazy to hear you talk about imposter syndrome. We were talking about this earlier before we started the show, and just how when you can be authentically yourself, you allow other people to show up that way too. And it is so hard to, you know, you talked about you as a little girl seeing, you know, someone that you wanted to be like. You probably had no idea what it was going to take or took for her to become where she is. And now you've kind of lived this whole like life cycle. And then now you're all of a sudden in charge. One of the things that I think is fascinating is when you walk on a set, there comes this stigma of like a beautiful woman in a place of power and a place of authority to not be taken as bossy, but more as direct. And I think sometimes it's, you go there and you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm bossy. I can't say this. I can't be outspoken, or am I going to hurt someone's feelings or whatever? And it's just like, just do your job. You can't look at them as other people that are nitpicking you. You just have to be yourself. Do you ever feel like you have that still, like even at that place in your career now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even, you know, obviously starting your own company, sure, there's a lot of freedom, but with that, you're hustling in a whole different way. And
Girl,
as you know,
preach. It is like stress. You're like, I want to work at Starbucks where I just show up. I just show up.
I'm like, so Italy, Umbria, Italy. Yes.
Yeah.
Countryside. Yes. Raising farm animals. Great. That sounds making matcha. Yes. I'm sure. I thought about that this morning, actually. No, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, especially if you are hungry and you're driven, which you ladies are too, and you're a perfectionist. Like, I'm a perfectionist. Like, I want to do a really good job. And so in everything. And, you know, I think the older I get there, I also realize that's unrealistic. The idea of perfection is unrealistic in every aspect, from your physical looks to your talent and, you know, how you conduct yourself and everything. It's like, I've started to realize, and I think what's made this more fun as I've gotten older is giving myself that grace that it does not always need to be perfect, and it won't ever be perfect, and kind of seeing that as the beautifuln's of it all, I think has allowed me to kind of like just breathe and just enjoy it. Because even like we were talking about teaching, I teach at USC, and these students, you know, they're like deer in headlights, and they're eager though to get an opportunity, but you can tell they're just so bound with so much anxiety. And I felt like, okay, I felt that anxiety when I was in college. We're all figuring out, what do we want to do with our lives and stuff. But this generation does feel like there is extra pressure. And I think because they're the first generation that's in this digital age where like they have grown up with being able to compare themselves, their careers, their path to people all over the world that they will never ever meet. And I don't envy them for having to grow up like that at all. But even I tell them, I'm like, just take a beat. And like, I say that to them because I have to remind myself to take a beat.
Yeah, right.
Like, and I think that's something that I'm like, yes, the expectation to just constantly perform and to perform at a high level. I mean, we work with athletes and we know what that means from an athlete standpoint, but I think we put that on ourselves, is that it is a performance in some ways. Like when you show up, when you show up to, you know, the arena and you're, working with a client and, you know, you're at NFL working on, you know, game day morning, it's like you get there and you care so much, I think, that you put this pressure on you to just perform. And so it does kind of turn into a performance. And I started to realize this will never be sustainable, because to me it came back to like, how do I make this thing that I'm so passionate about sustainable? And it was like I needed to take a minute and take a beat and realize like, like let's just enjoying the ride. And it came with like kind of taking down these walls of like needing to be perfect.
Right.
And understanding that like it's not a performance. I think going back to your original point of being authentic, it was like once I really became comfortable in my own skin and that like this is who I am. And no, I am not perfect, and no, I have my moments. But I think recognizing like, oh, this is who I am, and I don't need to. Yeah, you know, especially as a woman, especially when you get in it when you're so young, like so young, and like I think it's a blessing and a curse. I started my career in LA in like with the Dodgers and the Lakers. And sure, I was a production assistant, but I'm at Dodger Stadium every day. Like you are with the best of the best. You're working with the best franchises in their respected sports. And yeah, around the best professionals in the LA sports market. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that that's where I started, but it's like getting thrown in the middle of the pool and like, can you swim and stuff? And so I realized like I started at such a high level with, at the highest level with the highest quality that like, I always felt like I was on my heels, and I was like, this will not be sustainable. I will end up in Umbria, Italy on a farm.
And it's so true. Like, so one of the ladies that I love to watch is Jen Gottlieb, and she talks about how don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 25.
Yes.
And I feel like now, especially this generation, and young women are like, okay, we see India, we see Kate, we see Megan. I want to be her.
Yeah.
And it's intimidating, especially for me, to say, okay, well, how did I become that? Because there's all these failures and success and these hiccups, and it's not perfect. And you want to have this perfect image, but then at the same time, it's not realistic. And these young girls and young men in college are like, I want to get right there. And I'm like, no. Like, I had to go through a whole bunch of shit to get here. There's not. But they see it now. Yeah. And it's hard to reflect back for them of like, well, did you fail? Like, did you have something go wrong? Like, were you trying to not do this anymore? Yeah. Like, how is it? Because I think they just innately are like, that's so cool and I want to do it. But there's no one telling them how to do it. They just want to show up and be here. And I'm like, yo, you got to put in work. You got to take trash out. You have to do all kinds of hard stuff. You're in the gym. You're in the office later than anyone.
It's not glamorous.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm like, it is not glamorous. Like we look glamorous maybe to you or whatever, but it is not glamorous. Like, and I think that's something too. It's like the hard work. I'm like, I do believe at my core, nothing substitutes hard work. Like, I don't care about, technology, AI, it's all great. It's the way of the future. But I'm like, you cannot substitute hard work. And I think it gets back to finding your passion, because when you find something you're passionate about,
for sure,
you really don't want a shortcut. You don't. Like, sure,
you want to learn it.
You want to learn it, but you're like, you want to like, yes, I want to know every part of this. Like, I'm like, and that's something I'm so fortunate with my career. It's like, I've been able to do all the different parts, so that when you get to play, you also you're educated.
That's what I was going to say, as you go in,
you're better.
And they feel like, oh, she doesn't know this, that, the other. I'm always like, I want to know how all your jobs work, what you have to do, how does it work? Because maybe one day I have to step in and do that. Or two, if you question me, I'm going to know the answer. So it's a lot of our guests talk about women have to be almost over prepared in a setting, because you're automatically kind of looked at as like, she doesn't know what she's doing. And it's like, just over prepare. But learn it, but also learn it for your own self to feel comfortable. Like, I find a lot of confidence in like when I learn something, then I'm like, nah, you can't get me on that one. Good try.
Yeah,
keep
I love
going.
being able to just say,
no, not today. No.
Being curious too. I think that's what I tell even my students. It's like, be curious. Like, I'm so curious. Like, and I hope that I never lose that curiosity just to learn. Like, I just am like, if I'm gonna be here till, God willing, 80, 90, I would like to keep learning. Be curious and stuff, because to me, life is really just about how many experiences can you get until it comes where
it's there.
It's so I think it's about staying curious. I think has been a huge part of.
Well, also too, like you talk about how letting your guard down, like not being a perfectionist all the time. You've been nominated for so many Emmys working at NFL Network. Do you feel like your stories got better the more you kind of started to put your guard down and kind of like let your work speak for yourself? Or do you think the best stories that you created were ones where you were like very like prepared and very particular, I guess?
Yeah, I think in our world, especially as creators, and storytellers, is really going back to that voice. So every piece that I worked on, I feel like I found my voice more and more. And the voice is a reflection of who I am, as the woman that I am. And that means I'm getting to know myself more as the woman that I am. And that way it can now then be reflected into my stories. So I would say that they've gone better because my voice has gone stronger in each one of them. And also just when you get better at your craft, it's about reps. The more reps you take, the better you get. So I would say that yes, I think my stories got stronger just because my voice was stronger, because I knew the woman that I was, and I had so many more reps. But I also think my best stories were the ones that were there. We do authentic storytelling,
Right.
and there are so many stories that I even got, pitched to do at the NFL that when I got them, I'm like, I don't believe in this, or this is not the angle, or we don't get a lot of time with these athletes. We ask them to tell their lives to us, but we have literally like 2 hours to sit down and interview them and then create a mini movie around them. And usually I don't get a pre-interview with them. And so everything you're kind of learning about, their lives, you're having to research. And yeah, it took a lot of times. Like I'd get there and I'm like, oh, this is not the story, and I'd have to go back to my bosses and be like, either we have to go with what this story is, or like I'm not producing or directing it because I'm not putting my name on it, because it's a reflection of me, every story that I do. So, but no, I think the ones I'm most passionate about is the ones that I think I see my voice the strongest in, because that is, once again, a reflection of, me growing as a woman and knowing my voice.
I love that. Yeah.
And I think too, it's, from a storytelling perspective, you get to look at, I always look when we do stuff as like, okay, I want to take what I didn't capture, or I missed that, to the next one.
Yeah.
And so they ultimately get better as they
Right.
go, because you're like, oop, I know I'm going to want this because I've heard some version of this, or, oh, I missed this and I want to dig into it. And so they kind of evolve, and eventually like they each compound to each other. And then you're like, okay, this is the perfect, mixture of what I want to have made. And then you just start duplicating that. And it gives you that confidence too, when you're like, okay, everyone loved this. I saw the 5 things I want to do different. And then they love the next one more, and they love the next one more. But working with people that give you the freedom to be able to voice your opinion, voice your concern, voice something you want changed. Like even when I work with EPs, it's like, hey, can we this is a little slow. We don't need 5 seconds.
Yeah.
We need 3 seconds of this. And that just comes from experience. But it also comes from, I try and look at things through a lens of like, if I'm watching this and I know nothing, is this captivating enough to stay on it?
Yeah.
Or am I clicking through this fast forward? Like, is it too much talking? Is it too much walking? Is it too much whatever? Do you ever find yourself, or have you found yourself in a situation where you've had to speak up and it wasn't met with a yes, it was met with a no?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of my first. Oh yeah,
You're like, oh, say less.
yes, yeah. I mean, definitely one. I think the first time it happened when I was at the NFL, and I was given a story, and at that time our NFL 360 show didn't exist, so everything had to air on game day morning, our Sunday pregame show. And if anyone watches a Sunday pregame show, you wake up and you just want to hear the guys talking about the games, who their picks are. No one wants to see a story about, one of these players like losing their sister to suicide, So when I got this amazing story, and they're like, yes, go out, go tell it, and like all supportive. And then, you make this, what I feel, it's art. You make this beautiful story that's a full story arc. And you give it to your bosses, and they're like, oh, it's so great, but it needs to be 3.5 minutes, and it's 7 minutes. I'm like, so you want me to? And then you have EPs and CPs telling you like, just take this part and this part and this part, and it's like such a like knock on your craft, because you're like, this was crafted in a full story arc, so just taking that part and that part and that part
doesn't work,
and it changes the whole impact of the story, because every story I do, it the things I'm trying to do is educate, inspire, and entertain. And so those are like the 3 pillars I try to hit in all my stories. And I'm like, so I went to bat for that piece. That was the first time I really didn't feel like I had the support of my bosses, and they're kind of just like, they use their hierarchy, like, well, sorry that you feel that way, but that's just not the way it has to be. And I remember getting so upset, getting emotional. And yes, I think as women, we tend not to try to show that emotion, especially early on. You don't want to be emotional.
No,
you sure as hell don't want to cry.
You got to be like Stonewall, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to cry, because now you're weak and stuff. And I'll never forget, like, I had this like intense like conversation with my boss, and I remember like getting so emotional, so I like went to the bathroom and cried, because I'm like, I can't cry in front of him.
Right.
Because this was also my first big story, I'm 25, my first big opportunity, and like here I'm having to like, and I'm passionate, so I feel like, yes, I'm going to die on this hill, but I'm also not going to show emotion, because I want him to give me the next story.
Right. And not like, if she doesn't get her way, she's a hot mess.
Or she's just going to cause, like, because you're causing a problem or something. So I go to the bathroom, cry it out, and then like get myself together, and then I like go back and talk to him. And it ended up not coming in my favor, in the sense that we did have to cut it down, because back to, he's like, this show cannot sustain 7 minutes, and you can speak to the show side of things. And I've never been on the show. I've never sat in on the show. I'm not in live production. I'm in storytelling. And so, and actually sparked me then to go sit on the show. So the show starts at like, you have to be there by 6 a.m. So I sat there on for 4 hours on game day morning and watched the live show. And it really, I took away with like, oh, this is not the platform for this story to tell actually. But with that being said, I was going to leave the NFL because I'm like, well, if this is the only platform to tell these stories and this is all I get is 3.5 minutes, I can't stay here because I can't tell the best stories. And then thank God NFL 360 came along, which is, our longer form platform to tell these amazing in-depth stories. And because of that, that is actually why I ended up staying.
It's so powerful though, because it takes a lot of like just self-confidence and empowerment to be like, I can't stay here, because so many times it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna, this is what they're asking, this is what I'm gonna do, instead of being like, there's more there, there's a there.
Yes.
And it might not be here, it might be there, but that's a hard change like to make. Like even for me, it's like, oh my gosh, like if I don't do this, then am I gonna miss this? And it's just like, this is just regular shit. And I think that people now, especially in the last probably 10 years, have become more open to realizing all of these athletes are people. I think 10 years ago, it was like, you're an athlete. We don't really care what your life's like. It's not that hard. You make a lot of money. Right. And now it's people like you that are helping share the personal human side of people to say like, yes, all of that is true, but I'm also this person and I have these challenges. And I feel like the consumer now has such an easier path to connect to people that are willing to be vulnerable and share. But I'll be damned, it is hard to get somebody to be open and share and be real and not just like, yeah, that happened, and like very surface level, right? And I'm sure you've experienced it with athletes where you're like, give me more.
Like, if I get them to cry in these interviews, I feel like I had a successful day.
Okay, anybody she calls now is gonna be like, wait, no, she's the one that makes you cry. Like, no.
Like, he doesn't talk about that. He won't open up about that. I'm like, okie dokie.
You're like, challenge accepted.
Check. And then I'm like, how'd it go? I'm like, he cried, period. And then I get on my plane and come home because that's the goal. Like, but to that point, you're looking at these things. Can you imagine? I always think like you walk in and it's like, you walk in, I walk in, and this like, big 300-pound defensive end for the New York Jets is like sitting there like, okay, sure, I'll tell you about the passing of my sister, and he's like, good luck trying to get me to really show emotion, and like sobbing, and it's like I don't say that but it's like, because what I love about my job is it is so humanizing and it is so personal and it's so raw, and it's like really what they become is honestly like cathartic therapy.
Yes, it feels good.
It feels good, and it's like, but it's always rooted in the fact that we're trying to shine a light.
Yes,
we're never exposing. That is not our world. We're not here to sensationalize your story. We're not here to expose things of your story. We really believe, and like I really believe, and that's also why my company's called Intention Media, because it's like we do intentional storytelling that is raw and authentic, and that's it. And like when you can feel when someone is raw and authentic, and it doesn't matter if they're crying or whatnot, like you can feel when someone's being authentic. And I think that has such power, and that's why I've always chosen to tell stories through the lens of sports, because I think it's our last space in our society right now, at least, where it's like you can go and have these harder conversations and people's walls are down. And so because people ask me all the time, like, oh, well, would you do this outside of sports? And I've thought about it a lot, and I would never say no, but I'm like, the power to tell these stories through the vehicle of sports, I just don't see it having as much impact and reach. And even more than ever, to your point, is like these athletes, they've recognized, because of the growth of social media, of course, in the last 10 years, they've recognized they are a brand, they have a platform. Of course, we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement and the Asian hate crimes and all these unfortunate events that have happened, they went to their platforms and they also recognized they had a voice,
a call to action.
Yes.
They have a way to participate in a way that, for me, I always find is interesting is when you look through the length of your career, right? And it is so well established, but it is new too. You know what I mean? And it's like, how do you keep giving more? Like, do you go and find these stories? Like, are you like, okay, I've heard XYZ, or do you have, just for those listening, and I want to know because I'm ignorant in this space, do you have someone like, hey, these are the stories we think work, and then you as the boss get to say like, okay, cherry pick, or are you really hands-on in like identifying stories that you've heard or you want to kind of dig into? Because some of them you're like, whoop, wrong rabbit hole, don't want to go down there. And some of them you're like, I didn't know that.
Well, I think that was the challenge doing storytelling also within sports, and definitely for 7 years at the NFL. It's like yeah, it's the same athletes, except for the group that comes in from the draft.
Yeah.
It is the same athlete. And honestly, by now, you've heard their story or you know that's happened. And so actually the challenge as a storyteller in a space like that is like, how do you tell a story that people already know, but tell it differently, tell it better?
Right.
And I think what I love about being on the team that I was with at NFL and NFL 360 is that we took so many stories that people already knew about, and I think what we did is we put them in a different light that really was meant to educate and inspire, not just, like I said, entertain, or not just because it's Aaron Rodgers. And we always said it had to be your passion project. Like, we don't have, contrary to popular belief, we don't have a ton of money in the storytelling space at the National Football League. Storytelling is usually the first thing to go in, at big networks, because you need the games and you need the highlights and you need the daily shows. So storytelling is usually the first to get axed. And so kind of our team was like, well, how do we essentially try to make ourselves bulletproof? So when those budget cuts come, we don't get axed.
Yeah, we're not the first ones on the list.
We're like,
oh no, we're good over here. We'll be 5.
Yeah.
We're 5.
And so we started like, well, I think it's rooted in just these, telling really, really good stories, but it had to be done with passion. And we saw that the work, and you do talk about the Emmys, and while we're so proud of all the recognition that we've gotten, but what we're most proud of and what I'm most proud of is that, each story that we did was that person's passion project. And so to your point, it's like, some of them were like, given to us, and then it was my job to then dive into it and then come back and be like, oh, there is something really here, or this is how we can make it, we can entertain and inspire, and like I can put my spin on it. And then especially like the last one I did, we created NFL 360 Women in Football. So NFL 360 started like 6 seasons ago, and by the second season, it was the men in my department. They're like, we need a women's episode. And that's what I always think. And I always want to like destigmatize this like men versus women. I don't, that's not what I stand by. I would not be here. And I don't know how you ladies feel, but without amazing men that championed me, supported me, encouraged me, challenged me. Also, a big reason I stayed so long at the network was because I had the best bosses, and they were all male. But they really saw something in me, and they gave me opportunities, and they supported me, and they championed me, and they had the wherewithal, though, to 4 or 5 years ago, before any network, before honestly it was a thing to be talking about women in football, women in sports. They were like, we need a women's episode as part of our our programming in NFL 360, and they're also not naive enough to think they should be the ones
to
tell it.
Women. So they went and they're like, we want you to kind of like champion this, like the NFL 360 Women in Football episode every year. It's in March during Women's Month, obviously. And they're like, make this your baby. And going back to passion, it was like, how could you not get excited about that? Like, I got into this working in all male dominated sports for basketball, baseball, football. Never did I think I would be in a position at the National Football League to be telling stories that are solely the main character is a woman. They're usually sub characters, but no, the stories I was able to do at the network, they were on women, whether they're on the field. The head of security, Kathy Lanier, she's a woman. You have the referees, obviously women, like front office,
Gail
owners
Benson.
in the NFL, Gail Benson, like women. And so they were like, yes, we want to be telling stories about the amazing women, both on and off the field, in front and behind the lens. And we want you to, kind of honcho that, because we believe in you. And yes, it needs to be done by a woman. And so I think back to all that, like the passion comes through, like seeing what we were able to create with NFL 360 Women in Football is something that I will always be so proud of, not because we were able to shine light on so many amazing women, not just in football, but in sports. But I think what it did, as the conversation continues about generating the awareness that, like, yes, of course, I think we all agree. We don't want to be talking about women in sports forever. Like, we do want it to be the norm, and you hear that so much, but I do think back to the point of it is important you have to see it to know it exists. Like there are young girls out there that need to see you being an NBA agent, you being, in the chair in a live show, me being, the boss on set. They need to see that because they don't know it exists unless they see
exactly.
it.
It's super important. And I think, it's what Megan and I always say is like, we don't do the show just for us. We do it for the next us.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what I'm hearing from you of like, every project you're doing is for whoever watches it and takes something from it, and it empowers them to learn, grow, inspire at any level. And I think it's really cool too. So I want to jump into like your teaching at USC. Okay.
Yes.
You are
Fight on.
You are like
Trojan.
I'm like, is this like were you grandfathered in, or you had to
not at
apply?
all. Oh,
you had to apply and interview and all that.
What?
Did you have to apply and like interview
Teacher
to be a teacher, or like you went here so you can teach? Like, how did this work?
No, No, definitely not that. But
Because I'm like, well, maybe I should go back to mine.
should
Maybe
be,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I will say, because so I've been doing it now this is my second year. And, but yeah, coming out of the pandemic, 2021, we all were forced back into the office. And it was a pretty depressing year for myself. I actually, from a professional standpoint, I think felt the lowest I'd ever felt in my career in that 2021 season. We just, we're coming out of a pandemic. The expectation was to be in the office all the time, but we'd created this new life of like being able to do our work on, and we were still getting nominated for Emmys all at home. So we're like, now
we really?
Yeah.
And so it was like this weird pool. The energy was way off. We were moving into this beautiful new office next to SoFi that was like built like a mansion. It was like, the what do you call it? The holy grail of football. This office,
Beautiful.
Beautiful. But you like walked in and it's like, not to be cheesy, but like a house isn't a home without the people in it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had this beautiful office, but a lot of people quit. People chose, obviously they had moved back home. They're like, I'm not coming back. And so we lost a lot of people on our team in 2021, and because how we all operate, we didn't hire anyone until the end of the season, so we always are operating on the smallest margins. Now we were operating on the smaller margins, and the morale was just low. And I was like, and ESPN came, Amazon talked to them, and there's opportunities to like jump ship. And I remember taking all those and like, I'm just like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this isn't it. But I was like,
intuition.
I was like, and that's like always like my gut. I'm like, okay, because I was like, I also think I want to get off this ship, And I was like, and like everyone's leaving me, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
She's in her life jacket. Like, do I jump? Do I stay? Do I jump? Do I
what
stay?
does the horizon look like? And so I'm like, okay, and I'm
I
like,
can see it. It's coming, so I'll wait it out a minute.
No, so it's like, but so I was like taking these interviews. I'm like, okay, no, that's not it. And I'm like, okay, that's not it. But I'm a very upbeat, happy person. And yourself, like when you're like, and nothing was working.
Right.
No yoga, no bath, no like saging. I'm like,
Lighting candles.
She was like, I just need a week rager. Yeah, didn't work either.
Spa day, like nothing. A good cry into the pillow. I'm like, okay, I still feel low. So I was like, what is it? And so all that to say, get to the point of the USC thing is that, so that was, from August to really June, this is how I was feeling in a long time. And I'm always like, okay, it will pass,
Yeah.
I know myself, and it was not passing. And I'm like, dear God, India. And then, we had an opportunity. The dean of USC, Annenberg Journalism and Communications, Willow Bay, brought a group of students to the office. And Charlie Uke at the NFL kind of reached out to some alumni. And he was like, hey, I'd love some of you USC alumni to talk to these obviously young Trojans. And I'm like, great. I love doing that stuff. Love giving back. So did that. And then, I just had a quick little conversation with the dean, Willow Bay, and who is impressive herself, aspired to be her. But she was like, I was like, I really want to get back into the school. I've been bad since I've graduated. And she kind of threw out this idea of adjunct professors. She's like, oh, they're meant to be done with a full-time job. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like,
Wait, like full-time job, meaning like the 9 to 5?
Yeah,
like
NFL
our
Network.
full-time job. I'm like, I'm sure. I'm not an accountant. Like, this is like 24/7. So I was like, okay. And then, all that to say, there was this class, Journalism 350, Intro into Sports Media. And I was like, okay, but that was like, once again, all these opportunities that had come throughout the year. I'm like, no, this one, I was like, oh, this actually could be what I need.
Yeah.
And so I applied, I like reached back out, let them know. And then, it moved very quickly. Like, honestly, from the moment I had that conversation, I had a couple interviews to like being in front of my first class. It was probably 5 weeks.
Stop.
Wow.
And no, I do not. No, for the audience, I do not have a teaching credential. I've never taught. And no, literally, I was like, this was my dream school.
Like, you're the perfect person to teach. Like, we just had this conversation before the show. There's so many teachers that have an amazing amount of knowledge that was within a book.
Yes.
But the life skills and education you need from, I always say, I don't believe in internships. I believe in experience.
Yes.
And you have to have that level of experience to really be like, okay, the book is going to say this, and the book is not wrong. However, there's other ways to look at things or tackle things through a lens. And if you don't have that to draw from, people can tell, and then they're like, okay, well, she's just reading me the book. I'm not taking anything away from
Right.
this
I think we know in our world there is no book. This is
No,
not. I was like,
no.
this is not medicine. This isn't even engineering. It's like it is not 1 + 1 = 2 in this world.
2 + 2 = 8. Yes, it does.
And then, but I think that's to that point. I also had to remind myself, like, I'm one class of many classes that they're taking. They have a whole curriculum, and they are getting the book, and they are getting that in their other classes. I'm like, why was I brought here? And I even asked, because that's also kind of what sprung me, though, to end up leaving the NFL, is because I found this new outlet where I was getting met by these people for who I was today. And like, NFL did an amazing job, but I got there when I was a 23-year-old young woman,
Right.
and I'm 31. And while they grew with me, what first impressions do. You know how it's hard to recreate a tone while you're in a tone.
Right.
And I will give so much. This is why I love them so much, is because they did such a good job growing with me and trying to meet me at this level where I was now. And they gave me all these opportunities, but there always had this feeling of like the apprentice and the teacher, there.
Seeing you
And
as
it
that.
took me going to USC and having this whole new space that had nothing to do with sports or television. Like, we're talking academics.
Yeah.
A whole new ballpark. And I'm walking in being like, once again, feeling like imposter syndrome on my heels, just like I felt like when I came into the sports industry. But they were so nice to me. They were so like, you're here because look at all of your experience. Look at your network. Like, you are invaluable to our students. And they meant it. And you look at these people and you have a lot of respect for the people telling you that.
Right.
So then you start to be like, oh, it's like someone reminding you, like, oh, I actually did do all
like
these things.
the universe knew you needed that little, like, almost like that, I call it the wraparound, where you're like, okay, I'm thriving, but there's more to me than this. And you have that moment where you're like, holy shit.
But I
like,
could feel
this
it.
is But you have to take it, though.
You have to
And
take
you
it.
are so brave to take it, because sometimes you see it and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, it's there, but it's scary and I'm uncomfortable. And what do I do? And I'm like, be uncomfortable. It's
But
okay.
you have to be ready. But I
Yeah.
also, people are like, oh my God, it's so impressive. Yeah, you left the NFL. Like, yes, the mothership. Like, it was a nice, cushy job that
You could have done forever.
ever could have just kept good soldier up the ladder. And and they were grooming me to do that. And like I said, but it was one of those things, back to like being curious and wanting to grow.
Right.
It's like, I knew that when I got there, I knew I'd hit a ceiling. I just knew the corporate structure of that world. And I would hit it. And I was so fortunate, though, to have amazing, really, women that were 10, 15 years older than me that I got to meet along the way, that always gave me their unsolicited advice, like, hey, like, don't wake up and be 45 and be like, how did I get here? Don't freeze your eggs, even if you don't know, just freeze them now. Who cares, And big thing is, I want to be a mother. I aspire to be a mother. I aspire to be a wife. And so those are also things that, I, even my career to that point, I had to constantly continue to navigate it to fit my personal wants, because I saw so many, women that like waited too long to like get married because they had their head down, they're working so hard, and if they had kids, they couldn't do all these things, and you make these sacrifices. And I was fortunate to have that awareness as I was going through my career, so I was able to make choices as I was going through, be like, oh, if I keep doing this, like, I was saying earlier, like, the first 3 years I was on a plane every week, and every team I went to was east of the Mississippi for some reason. God forbid I went to the 49ers or the Seahawks.
Go ahead over
Go
there.
to Green Bay.
Buffalo, Baltimore. I'm like, Atlanta. I'm like, okay, my sky miles are just looking real pretty. But
Love that.
I hated getting on a plane. And so I had to go to my boss and be like,
Yeah.
we need to figure something out here, because this is not sustainable. I'm so passionate about this, but like, I need to start moving towards a leadership role here at this company, if I'm going, because I'm like, I want to be able to go on a date on a Friday. Like, I don't want to be in the Holiday Inn in middle of nowhere, Georgia, because that's where these stories are. These are where these players are from. So I was going, I've seen a lot of America that I've never played.
And you're like, some of it looks the same, and some of you're like, wow.
I'm eating like an ice cream Snickers bar from the like freezer on a Friday night.
Oh my
That's my dinner,
gosh.
because it's like, and I'm like, Dallas, I would like to be. I need to start molding though my career, and that's something I think is important, especially for women, to know that you can maneuver your career in a way that fits your personal needs, and you should do that, because I think that's why women especially get resentful, and people get resentful of their work, is because they feel like they've sacrificed so much and it hasn't given them something back. And I was so fortunate to have someone tell me one time, like, the job's not going to love you back, India. And I know we hear things all the time, but it's like that someone says something, and for whatever reason, like, just how they say it and where you're at personally, it just clicks. And like, he said it, he's like, the job will not love you back, India. I'm like, obviously I know that, but it's like something struck and I was like, that's right. Like,
Right.
it's just
a loving,
it's
kind
your job.
person, and you feel like I am this way, so everything back to me should be
Yeah,
this
yeah,
way. And you're like, but wait,
exactly.
I'm over here loving,
but how is
pouring.
like my work gonna hug me when I get home? It
Yeah,
cannot.
yeah.
It cannot.
You
It
need
cannot. But you
that
feel
or
like
whatever.
yeah, but you're like, okay, I want to keep pouring into this because I believe in it and I'm
Yes.
championing it. But at the same time, you also have to step back and be like, okay, as a person, what am I missing?
Yes.
And how am I filling what I need? So to be a true me, I need A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I might miss out over here, but it's accomplishing my A, B, C, and D for me, because I had a boss tell me one time, he was like, look, like, at the end of the day, this is a job. And if you walk away, there'll be another you.
Right.
And at first I was offended and I was
Right.
like,
I am
what?
special.
I
Well,
know,
I'm like,
like,
what the
no,
hell?
nobody's
Like, y'all
like
are
me.
not going to survive without me. Like, okay, let's play this game then.
Yeah.
But then it came years later, I'm like, no, it is true. And now even as a CEO for me, I'm like, I look at it through the leadership lens of like, yes, that person might not work out. There's going to be another one. So I've had to like re-engineer my own thinking of like, okay, it is true, and not get lost. And I feel especially as a woman, I feel so much stress and like conviction of I have to be the best and the best version. And then I miss out on so many things that allow me to be my best version. And it's so important to hear you talk about women that are like, don't do this, don't do that, or make sure you do this, and please do that. And I think for me, I try and do that now where I'm at in my career, is to say to these young ladies, like, do these things, but then also keep growing you, because there is Kate that's the executive, there's Kate that's the mom, there's Kate that's the friend, but then there's also just freaking Kate. Like, who the hell is Kate?
Well, that's what I'm
Today, like, who? I don't know. Let's figure this out today. But it's like, I'm still just a person.
Right.
And I sometimes squash who I am as a person to fill the other buckets I need to be.
Right.
And then ultimately, I just feel really shitty. And you're like, I'm doing all this and I don't feel good about it, and I'm thriving, but then I'm not finding joy in it.
Right.
And it's great to hear that other women are saying to you, like, do all of these things. And I think women need to do that more.
Right.
To say, like, learn from me or let me help you, but then also be humble enough to take that as someone's just looking out for me.
Right.
Because you
Nothing
put a guard up as a
personal.
woman. I feel like it's like, what are you trying to do for me? Are you trying to take my job? Are you trying to give me bad advice so you can get my job? Or you know what I
sure,
mean?
yeah.
It's so awful
Yeah.
to think that way. And so really trying to create a space to be like, I receive it and I hear it. And then it's up to me what I do with it, instead of like, "Meep, don't want to hear this." It's like, well, you might be right today.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's all, for me, it's like information. It's like just another nod of information. And then, to your point, like, you get to then choose how you use that information.
Yeah.
And that's even like, in teaching, I'm like, this is what I can provide in terms of information, knowledge. And as if you leave here having a little bit better knowledge and information on the world of sports media, which is broad and like can't be covered in a semester.
Definitely
it's
not.
like, I feel like I've done my job, because when you have information, you can make a more informed decision.
Yes.
And so that's something that and that's why I love doing things, even like being on these podcasts and having these conversations, is because someone hears it, and like, to me, it's just like whether they agree with it or disagree with it or doesn't resonate at all, it's still a piece of information that, that they can take with them. And I think when you have the more information you have, the more informed decision you can make as an individual. So I think it's important to share. It's your personal journey.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I want to hear more about intention too, because like your new company, Intention Media, just because like you worked for NFL for so long, and it's like I feel like so many women, it's so difficult for them when they have like that cushy job to take that leap
It's so
and to
hard, because
leave.
you're like, am I going to bet on myself?
Exactly.
Am I
It's
going to
so
do
hard
it?
to do
Like,
that.
I've been doing it my whole life.
Well,
Exactly.
And you're like, I know what I'm doing. Like, what I don't need.
Right.
I know how to lead, and I'm hit the ceiling where I can't lead,
Right.
and I can't grow. And when you can't grow, you can't teach others to grow.
Exactly.
3 years. Literally have a rule. 3 years. You're either growing up or you're
Ooh,
out.
That's a good.
Because
that's a good one.
otherwise, you're just staying this person.
Yeah.
And sadly, those are the people that climb corporate ladders that are like,
I know, but then
they don't do enough to get fired, and they don't do enough to like, go anywhere. They're just kind of there. But it's like, I don't have that.
I
But
know.
there are people where you're like, you got it.
Well, that's what
You
I
were
love
saying,
too. I respect
you
that
got
so
it.
much when people can take that leap and they can take that risk.
Were you
like,
scared?
Yeah.
I was out of my mind scared. And I was like, am I sure? Wait, I changed my mind.
I know it's scary.
So fun. No, but that's what's so cool about it, is because back to just being, intuitive and in tune with yourself.
Right.
And that's why I preach very much. So like, yes, find out who you are. Like, and you only know that by experiencing things, keep experience, and that gut feeling when you're like, oh, I didn't like that, or oh, I like that. Pay attention to it. Literally write it down, because that's your gut telling you a little bit more about yourself, or good or bad. And so to that point though, it was like, yeah, going back to that 2021 season, I started to feel like, oh, we're hitting that ceiling, and I'm like, oh, I'm not growing. And yeah, I was like, okay, but I was like, but I wasn't ready to take that leap. And I think that's also something to tell people. It's like, don't take you'll know. I always was like, I'll know. And I kept and there were times where I'm like, I'm gonna quit today, like you're working, you're like, I'm doing it,
I'm done. I feel
I'm done.
She puts on her power song. I can just envision this. She's like, it's happening today. It is.
It's either Love on Top by Beyonce or Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody.
See, I love it.
So I was like, so I'm like, I know. I'm like, India, you will know. So all that to say is that was 2021. So we go through the 2022 season, and we were back to full staff, full health from a team standpoint. We had such a strong year. But the whole year I knew that was in my gut, I knew this was my last year. So the whole year I went through it being very present, because I'm like, you're not going to be here next year. I just knew that. And so the Super Bowl, when I went to the Super Bowl, I was very as tired as I was, I'm like, you will enjoy all of this because you will not be here in this capacity again.
Right.
And then to that last piece that you got to help on, it was NFL 360, I Am Woman. And I pitched that back in December, and it was meant to kind of just tell a really artistic, beautiful narrative of what it means to be a woman in football, a woman in sports, but really a woman in today's society. That was the crux of the piece that I pitched. And I presented it to my bosses, and they were like, yeah, great, amazing, love it. Love the visual storytelling and my whole deal. But they're like, it needs to be from your voice. It needs to be about you. It needs to center around you. And back to I don't like the attention on me like that. And I'm like, I'm just also not self-promoting like that. It all felt weird. And so they're like, but this is silly. You are a woman in football. You are a woman in sports. You are her. You are her.
You are her.
Exactly.
So it can't come from anybody else. And the visual motif of the whole piece is around ballet, actually, because I grew up with ballet, and I love ballet. I love the femininity of ballet. But ballerinas, they're so strong. And so the visual motif is also, I wanted a dance element because I feel like as a woman, it feels like a dance. I mean, life is a dance, in my personal opinion. The ebbs and flows, the coming, the going. I think it's very lyrical, and life is truly a dance. And so, but that piece, when they decided to, to green light it and do it, I also went through that process being like, this is my love letter to this place, that piece, so I wrote it from, what it meant to me from being a little girl to now to be a woman in football.
How powerful is that though, for you to just, you're designing something, and in your mind, it's not you. You're not designing it for you.
Yes.
But then to have your own champion and your own support be like, you're missing this.
Yeah.
This is you.
Yeah.
And then you embrace that.
No, and I also just felt
so freaking cool.
But it also felt so right to your point of going through that whole season, knowing this was my last season, and then that episode every year has always been my passion, and then for that episode to be centered around what it has meant to me to be a woman in football and in sports, I was like, not to be an asshole, there's no way I can do a piece here that I would feel this close to, obviously. So I went into it being like, it all just felt like a beautiful bow on this experience. And I always wanted to leave, though. That's what I tell other people. I'm like, I always wanted to leave before I got to that point of resentment and curmudgeon, because this has been such a beautiful experience.
Right.
It's been hard as hell, and I have cried, and I have been exhausted, and I have failed, but I was like, all in all, it has been such an amazing experience, and I would hate that I stayed too long, that it started to taint that.
Right.
And so I always tell myself, you need to get out before you start to feel that. And I had a couple of conversations about, my future at that company. And, they were like, essentially, because of the arbitrary rules, we cannot promote you until next season. And I was
Why
like,
is that? Okay, I need to know. I want to get in the tea here.
No,
I need to get in the tea. I need to understand. I'm glad they said it, but what does that mean?
No, and that's also why I've been able to stay so long, is because me and my boss had a great dialogue the whole time, and I was like, I need to be here in 8 months. I need to be working towards this in a year. And he always put me in situations knowing that we had a massive corporate structure that at some point there's only so much he could do.
Right.
Yeah. But he was so actionable, and that feels so good to have someone listen to you. And so I kept doing that. And then, we were going into next season, and I have been in my role for, 2 football seasons. So in August, it would have been 2 years. And I was like, I cannot do another season, without being, I'm already, as you know, you're always doing the job of 2 steps ahead of you.
2 to 3 years.
3 years.
We just talked about 3 years.
3 years.
The 3 years, and you got to go up or move on.
Yeah.
And you're like, this would have been my 3rd season.
Yeah.
But also
the universe, y'all. I'm telling you.
But also, it's just arbitrary. You have your bosses all saying you need to move up. You've been doing the role, but because of some HR policy, we cannot do that. And you suck. But I knew this was going to happen. I knew the corporate structure would stunt my ability to grow, and that's what would eventually need me to leave. And so I knew this. I was not surprised at all, but finally having him say it back to me, like, we can't do that, literally because you have not done this for 2 fiscal years. I'm like, so fiscal year starts in April. I got this job in August of 2021. So it will be 2 years in August of 2023. But because I didn't start it essentially, 4 months earlier, 5 months earlier, like 3 months earlier, I now have to go through a whole nother year with the same pay, with the same, you're like, no. And I was like, so that was really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, because in our world, May and June are kind of like slow. That's whenever, like, after the draft, everyone kind of just can like, until like July. But I help oversee Hall of Fame, and Hall of Fame is one of these kind of projects that like lingers all through May and June, but I have a team working on it. So I still feel like I can like, so I was like, I need to get to May, and like I'll probably be able to reset again, and I can do this again. And it was just one of those things, like I was just kept getting like, I was like, I'm like, I keep getting bombarded with more and more work. I can't take a beat. And I'll just never forget it. I was like rushing per usual, running out my door, trying to get to the office, before to make this 10 a.m. Zoom about our NFL 360 stories, and like, what are your grand ideas, India? And I obviously hadn't had time to come up with any grand ideas. So once again, feeling like a failure, like I haven't. So I'm over here like making shit up, like of like potential stories that I could then look into. Like I'm like, because I have to have 5 ideas, and they're like counting on me, and I'm like, don't have them. So I'm like running to the office. I'll just never forget it. I like am getting out of my car, and my bag gets like stuck in my car door, and I just like stop back to taking a beat, and I just got in my car, put it down. I'm like, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And it was just that moment that I always knew would come when I knew it was time for me to go. And so I collected myself, and I felt so much peace. And I got out of the car, got onto the Zoom with someone who has been a huge mentor to me. And he's like, great, what ideas do you have for next year? I can't wait to hear them. I'm like, I will not be here next year.
I have a really great one. It's called I'm Moving On.
I'm moving on.
I have one today.
Ding, ding, ding. And I was like, I won't be here next year. And he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, it's time. It's time for me to move on. It's been so great, but I'd be lying to you if I said that, me staying here was going to be honestly beneficial for both of us, but really for me. And I was like, yeah, it's time for me to move on. He was like, holy hell. He's like, well, have you told everyone else? I'm like, no, you're the first one. So now I'm going to get off this call.
It's 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's 10 a.m. So
10 a.m.
I'm going to get off this call and start making my rounds. So I closed it. Like I cried on the call with him and like got emotional, and like, it felt like such a release. Like, when you needed to, like when you need to
let
break
it
up
out,
with a boyfriend.
Let it out.
You're like, and you're just like,
Yeah.
I felt so good. So I collected myself and then just went to every person I needed to tell. I'm like, hi, can I talk to you real quick? I'm like, so we're done here. Like, it's time, but the
She gets to the 5th one, and they're like, don't answer her call. The group chat is like, if she calls you, don't answer. If she calls you, don't answer.
For sure,
and it was
especially with
so
India.
cute. My one boss was like, I knew this was coming. So that was also, and it was such a healthy thing. But I had things, this was in like June 1, and I had some things I still had to get done for them, that the Hall of Fame being one of it, and that takes you till the enshrinement show, which is the first weekend in August. So I was like, I'm going to see these things through. So I'll stay through Hall of Fame. So it's really like a 2-month goodbye, which honestly can seem long, but it actually was the healthiest like way to do it, because I could slowly like unwind from it all. But to your question, like, did you ever feel scared? It was so interesting because like, they came back and offered some things, like to get me to stay. And you sit there at night, I'm a single woman who takes care of herself, and the lights stay on because I make them stay on. No one is supporting this besides me. And you sit there and you're like, at night you're like, and it was just it's so cool. And I've always trusted my gut, but it was so cool that in those 2 months, 60 days, I could sit there and revoked it at any point. And they asked many times. And every time I was like, no, this is so the right move. And even to this point, it's been since August, so 4 months. And there's not been a moment that I've like, of course they're like family. I mean, I still work alongside them, but it's just like, it's felt so good. And I've never been so sure of something. Just like when I went into this field when I was like 20, I knew this is what I wanted to do. It's that similar feeling doing this. I'm like, not that it's not scary, and not that I'm like, trust me, there are times I'm like, okay, I know I can do this. I'm smart. Like, I am a leader, but of course, once again, you have imposter syndrome. There's doubt. I was like, we have a lifestyle we like to uphold. That costs a lot of money. I'm not naive to that. And like, when I'm like, oh, I need to be making this much every year and then some. So you start to like, yes, there's a little bit of that, but honestly, it's so motivating. And I believe so much in what I am seeking to do in this next chapter that it honestly has not felt scary at all. There's moments of like, okay, like, here we go. But it's not like I've been like, oh my God, I need to go back
Yeah.
to the NFL.
Yeah,
Or like,
I
no, like,
agree.
people have come and wanted me to come back to, a very corporate structure and like with a really nice job. And they're like, would you want to come back in-house for a corporate like place or agency? I'm like, honestly, like, no, not right now. Like,
Yeah.
And I
love
think that's so beautiful because you're like,
Right.
not right now.
No.
Not ever, but just right now, this is what I want to do. And I think, so you were saying you had all these little moments and like I call them little road bumps. And I call it like God saying, are you still stupid?
Yeah.
Like, oh, yep, didn't take my hint. Let me give you another one.
Yeah.
Up, you're still not listening to me. Let me just let you just wrap your whole bag up in
Yeah.
a door.
I love that.
And it's funny.
like a crazy person. I'm like a crazy person.
but
coming out
then
of,
you're,
like, the-
but then
I
you're
just
like,
can see it.
I have those moments and I'm just like, okay, I'm here.
My hand
Yep.
up to
Yeah.
God.
I
Yep.
hear ya. I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's all you, not me. I hear ya, and I'm not gonna fight it anymore. And then when you have that, it's like such peace because you're like,
Yeah.
I
And
think
you're at
that's what we're all
peace.
seeking is peace.
Yeah.
And people are like, what are you looking for? And I think you and I'm like, I think we're all seeking peace. And I mean, but that's not a constant feeling. You can't constantly feel it.
I mean, some people
Right.
can, but like maybe it's
Yeah,
Jay
if you're high,
Shetty. Yeah,
if you're-
Jay Shetty's over there just living his best life. And I'm like, I want to be more of that, not this.
His
But
daily work is practicing, meditation and
Yeah.
thoughtfulness,
Yeah.
which is so beautiful.
Right.
But I think we're all seeking peace, knowing that it is, you have to really work at it, you know? And I think that's going back to like this conversation of like constant work. Like, I think that's important to remember. It's like, as long as I believe we're living and we have air in our lungs, it is just constant work. Doesn't matter how much money someone has or gives you or your worth or whatever. It's like to feel that sense of peace. We all know money doesn't buy peace.
Right.
You know that.
no.
So it's like to feel that sense of peace, like you really have to just constant work. And that's why I really think that as soon as I kind of realized like it's just going to be constant work, I can't outrun the constant work. I might as well settle in and enjoy it. I think that has once again allowed me to get back to enjoying this whole process.
Right. And now, like, your
Goes
whole
on and on and on.
it really does. But I think
Another
something that's
Tuesday.
cool too, right? Seriously, it's just like
Is it Monday?
It is.
yeah, it is. It is
I
Monday.
think it's like a regular
Is that a
Tuesday.
saying? I'm not good at saying. So is that a saying? I'm like,
It's like, wait, what's
"Holy shit,
today?
It better be Monday.
You're like,
Yeah, I'll just
wait, it's
be on a
Tuesday.
flight later.
I kept going with it and been like, it's Tuesday.
No, I'm
You're
like,
not
it's
here.
definitely Monday. Because I did work yesterday, so that was like, I'm like, no,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
Monday.
Well, I think something that's really cool too, though, is that your new company is all about empowering women.
Yes.
So, like, I want to hear about that and like basically how you even like got to that idea, like how you wanted to even start this production company, and what was the idea behind it. And yeah, I'm just excited for you too. So
We're excited. Well, I think we all know there's not a lack of content out there. There's not a lack of production companies. What I realized, so when I was even kind of thinking like, what is my next move? Is it going to another big network or streaming company? What is it? I started to go back. For me, it's like, it's not about a title. It's not about a job. It's about a personal mission statement that I have within myself. And what I am passionate about, and this is just who I am, I genuinely am passionate about empowering women. I really I think we are so uniquely amazing in so many ways, but that's a whole other conversation. But I was like, and I think what I got at the NFL through doing NFL 360 Women in Football, I started to see the impact of telling these women's stories and what it could really do. And I saw that. And when you actually see the impact you can have, like I said, even if it's on one little girl, I don't care. I know it sounds so cheesy. I believe in
One
it.
person.
It's one person.
Right.
We say
Yep,
that all
yeah,
the
we
time.
do.
If
Yeah.
this show impacts
person.
one person,
Right.
it's done its job.
Yeah.
Literally, if it has helped one
One
person,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
that's
So
what we're here for.
I was like, there is not a lack of these things. So I don't also just want to saturate the market. I don't want to just
Right.
be another whatever. So I really sat with it this last year. And the thing that was cool also being at the NFL in my role, I worked on the business side a lot too. I did a lot of creative and obviously, but I was kind of the one helping oversee all the content that we outsource every season. No matter how much budget we lose, we find money to outsource content to all these out-of-house production companies. So I'm not only saying that, I'm also saying, obviously, I'm the one paying them. So saying, how much we pay for this content? And then I'm the one in charge of like giving the creative notes to get it to a place so then it can air. And you're starting to see like, oh, I can do that,
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
like, and also how much they're making doing that. And I'm like, okay. So that started to like get things going. I'm like, I can definitely do that. And I'm not flying blind from a business standpoint. I know exactly what it costs to do these things. And then my world is like, from a creative standpoint, I have a Rolodex of amazing creative people I can call on at any point. Because while I was in-house, every project I did, they were freelancers. They were all hired, for each project. So I have this Rolodex of amazing creatives, a lot of women that I would like to keep working with that weirdly was so hard to get on board because of all of our red tape that we have to work,
Right.
on our projects. And so I was like, okay, so was thinking through it all, and then I have a lot of respect for the Margot Robbies of the world and Reese Witherspoon, and I started to really look into their business model and their companies, because their focus is on highlighting female stories, through film and TV. And so I was like, I really love what they're doing, and I think they're doing it in such a beautiful way. There's artistry to it. I feel like they're not just like, oh, because they are who they are, they have obviously the means to go and like pitch these stories, but the stories that they're telling, if you watch them, they really are like, they're giving us a really cool palette of different female stories to tell and how they do it. I'm so impressed with, and I'm like, I think that's so beautiful, but we don't have that in the sports world. We do not. We have that's film and television, but that does not exist here. And I know the people that do all the out-of-house work for Fox, ESPN, Us, Prime, and they're amazing. They're all dudes. And I love them. And they're great fathers, a lot of them. But I'm like, we don't have a strong female sports production company but also knows how to do these stories at a high level, like has the quality behind it.
Correct.
Right.
But it also just doesn't exist. And then you look at all these female sports stories that, are starting to get the attention they deserve. Obviously, it's taken a little longer. But, you look at Caitlin Clark. You look at what's happening at LSU, with Angela Reese and even the NIL money behind those women. And then look at the WNBA. The Aces are back-to-back, champions. And we really don't some people don't know that. I brought that up a couple times. Like, oh, I didn't know that. And, and then even being at USC, it's like you have the 2028 Olympics coming. And a lot of our Olympians are women. They're on the track team. They're on the swim team. And I'm sitting there being like, there's so many amazing female sports stories out there that need to be told through the female lens. And I'm not saying, of course, that men can't tell them one up, but we know that what makes a good story impactful is that I do believe the person telling it has some type of connection to it, because then you can bring some nuances out that you don't even realize you're doing just because we have a shared experience about being women. And so all that to say, I was like, okay, I think there's actually a need for this. So that's what really inspired me to move forward. It was like, I was looking around like, okay, there's not a lack of production company, but there's not this here. There's not a strong female-led sports production company that has a focus on elevating female sports stories through the female lens. And I do feel like my background and my book of business and stuff really allows me to be able to do that well and to, kind of grow this in a way that not only can we can scale it and it can be sustainable, but I do think it could have real impact and reach. I think it's very timely. Like, I would be an idiot if I didn't capitalize on also being a woman in sports right now, because hopefully it doesn't matter anymore. But while it matters, is also just a timely thing to capitalize on it, because there's also going to be some woman that comes and does this, and I'm going to be sitting there being like, the hell, like I should have been the one doing it.
You should have been the one to do it.
Okay, I missed that mark.
No. So all that to say, it's all rooted in passion. It's all about really, obviously, telling really intentional stories through the lens of sports. Of course, there will be male sports stories being told, but really, it's deeply rooted in making sure we're telling those female sports stories and we're letting the female creative tell those stories. So hopefully that they can, have some impact and reach and inspire. So that's the root of it.
I just think it's so crazy, like even just as a woman in sports, right, listening to it, because one of my biggest hindrances to doing interviews, to doing things where I show up in my professional capacity, not in my Starbucks fun time over here, but just it's intimidating because I always feel like the people producing it are producing it through their lens, right, which they are. But I would feel more comfortable working with a woman who's like, okay, does this sound stupid? Do I look stupid? Is my ass hanging out while I sit here? Like, you want to have that reassurance. But then also the things I struggle with, I can't connect with some people on, and they might be like, okay, I want you to dig into that a little bit more. I want you to talk to me about this a little bit more, because they've been through a similar experience. And so as a woman in sports, it's so intimidating because you feel judged. I mean, I literally, I sit with athletes all the time and I'm like, just speak how you know what I mean? You're not going to say the wrong thing. Just say what you want to say, right? But there's this intense amount of pressure that comes with when you say something, you can't get it back, And especially in the world of social media, especially the world of digital media, everything's heightened. But having a safe space with people who understand you and what you've been through, I think is just such a unique lens, because I would much rather have you create something for me, because I'm like, you have had to bust your ass like me. You've had to bang down doors. You've had to like fail or be told no or be questioned. You get it. So when I'm talking, it's not through a lane of judgment. It's through you saying, share that experience because I have your back, instead of like, oh, it's another woman talking about how hard it is. Like, it's hard for everybody. Everybody. But my experience is as a woman. It's not as anything else. So I can only speak to my experience. And not feeling like are they going to make me look stupid or sound stupid or make me say something that makes me bossy? Or we always joke when people say, are you someone's bossy? And I'm like, well, maybe they just have leadership qualities. That's how I define it. I'm like, no, I'm not bossy. I just have leadership qualities. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, exactly.
And it's and what it's unfortunate I found with myself because of my personality. It's like I am bubbly. I can be playful and humorous and all those things. But I lead with that because once again, being your authentic yourself, that's me. But yeah, it's so funny. There's always a point in some process, in the creative process, the business side of it, where you're like that, and they say someone takes advantage of it. The work is not getting done, or I'm like that. You would never show that to so and so. So why are you showing it to me like that? So then I have to get like that, and then it's like so infuriating to me because then they're like, oh, we knew all along she was like that. Like, like
the picture
as if
side.
I was being like something. Oh, she was trying to be fun and sweet and stuff, but really that's how she is. I'm like, no. Actually, I'm so pissed off that you're making me not be my fun, lovely self. That I'm actually annoyed. So yeah, now I'm getting annoyed. But it's like it's so annoying that they're like, oh, see, we always knew that's like how you really are. I'm like, no, you made me have to go there.
Right.
And it's like you did that.
You kind of took advantage of me a little bit. You took advantage
my
of
kindness and my niceness.
If you were an asshole to begin with, you wouldn't have done that. Like if I was a really hard-nosed asshole, you would not be coming at me that way. But because I'm not, you think it's okay.
And you're trying to see how it's like a kid. It's like a kid. How far can I push you?
Exactly.
And I'm like so pissed off. No, it's like, and I'm like, that's actually where I spent a lot of my energy in my career is like, because I've been in leadership roles for so long and at such an early age that I've like spent so much time like, how do I present myself from the jump so that way we don't get to that point?
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
I'm like, you know what? So then I'm like, I've gotten more comfortable when I have to be assertive and get shit done. I'm like, I will be damned. This is my name on the line. So it will be of high quality. So either you get off the train or I will throw you off the train or you buckle in and you do your job.
She's like, I'm opening the door. It's your chance.
You
want to run? Go for it.
Everyone has choice here. Everyone has agency, but I'm just like, I will not stand for laziness. I have a big problem with laziness. And when I have to get assertive, I've just gone, once again, more at peace. When I have to get there, I have to get there.
Right.
And I can't feel bad because I think what's so cool, I think so beautiful about women, and I think what it actually allows us to be some of the best storytellers is because we have this empathetic side. And to that point, like, when you say, like, I'd much rather have you tell my story, it's because I think when women sit down and you look at a woman, she's asking the question, you do feel a safe space. Why do you think these big, burly men sit down and they, like, break down and cry? It's because I'm on the other side, and it's because they feel, safe. And I think that's our superpower of ours.
For sure.
Our ability to emotionally connect so quickly. Like I meet these guys and I have 2 minutes while they're getting mic'd up before they sit down and tell me their tragic life story. And somehow in that time I have to get them to trust me. But I think going back to just being women and what we bring to the table is we have this ability to let people connect so quickly. And I think that's what makes us our superpower. And that's why as I've gotten older, I am so glad that I am a woman. And I know that sounds so like, I'm so glad to be a woman, but I really am. Like, I know I don't have a choice. I am one. But I'm just like,
she's like, I didn't really get a choice, but I'm glad I didn't get a choice, but I still would have chose it.
I would have. I think it's so cool. I think it's so impressive what we can do.
So I want to dig in just a little bit into kind of like how, you, a little bit deeper, where you're from, how'd you grow up, and what challenges did you have breaking into this field?
I grew up in Palm Desert, California, so most people know that now where Coachella and Stagecoach is, and people are always surprised that kids grew up there. I'm like, yes, a lot of children live in the desert. There's not willows burning in the fields. So I grew up, only 2.5 hours away, and I think what I loved about that is that I had access to coming down to LA, coming down to Orange County. But what I loved about it is that it is surrounded by mountains, so it's truly like an oasis, and it's a lot of old money. And so I think what was nice is everyone there. It was nice, but when I got to LA and even Orange County, where there's like people like throw this pretentiousness in your face and stuff, you're like, oh, there's a way to do that and a way not to do that. But I was raised by a single mom. I'm one of really 6, so there's 4 full, and then I have a half brother and a half sister. But that's kind of where I get some of this like strong female tendencies and qualities, because growing up, my mom, she owned her own construction company, and she was a badass, but she wore high heels every day. Everyone's like, oh, here comes India's mom,
love it.
And I'm like, here comes my mom.
I love that.
Rolling up like,
That gives me such hope.
Yeah,
it gives me such hope.
No, and she was so unapologetically herself. Yeah. And she was feminine and she was beautiful, but she was strong. And so when you grow up and that's all you know, you just think that's normal.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get older and you realize that's not normal and stuff. But that's what I think has been so fun about this whole journey is that that's what I grew up knowing. And so, yeah, as I got older, she taught, because I think about when I have my own kids, I'm like, because she was a single mom, yeah, with the 4, and we all are different, but I think we all went on to be good people to society.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, and you see kids nowadays and you're like, okay, and I'm like, you just like, how do we turn out good? I'm like, what did she do, that, maybe I can do when I have kids? And I always go back to like, I always felt loved. And I think that was her showing up, and she was always present. And every holiday, like Valentine's Day, I'd come home and there was like, my bed was made with all like the heart boxes and the balloon. And she made little moments feel big and special. And I felt loved. And so from an early age, I knew my self-worth. And I think that's what it comes down to, like raising kids. It's like feeling that self-worth. So when I got older and I got put into very challenging, trying situations where, my integrity might have been tested, or I could have made a different decision, because honestly, it would have been easier. Yeah. And I did it, and I was like, and I came back to like my self-worth. And so I'm really grateful that whether she knew it or not, which I don't think, you're a mom, I'm not, but like you don't know if you're doing it right. You don't know if you're getting it right.
Every day is like, oh, they're still alive. And
that's our
good.
basis.
So you're
for
winning,
success.
right? You're winning.
Everyone's still alive. Like we might not be killing it at 1,000, but we're still all here, and we'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think it came back to like, I always felt loved. And so I think what that did for me was that I felt a sense of self-worth from an early age. And then when I got older, as I decided I wanted to get into a business that, I had to pay my way through college. My mom, did great, but then we had a really hard time in high school and stuff, and things changed pretty drastically. And I had, I thought my grandmother was gonna pay for my college, and she got Ponzi scammed, and she called me my senior year being like, can't pay for your college, I had no savings, I had no idea. And so actually I went to San Diego State for 2 years and transferred to USC because I was like, I was, had a 4.6 GPA. I loved school, and I was a cheerleader, ASB, did all the things, and I was so excited to go off to college, but I was like, and I wanted to go to USC, but I'm like, I can't financially afford a $60,000 university. And so then but it was one of those things, I just think adversity is so cool, and I really don't think everyone will be hit with adversity, whether when you're young, in the middle of your life, older, maybe at all points. And I just think it is so healthy to have that adversity, because what you learn about yourself during that time, it is so invaluable, and it really does. It prepares you for the next thing. And I know we hear that all the time, but when it actually happens, you do see the truth in that. And so while I obviously don't wish that upon anyone, that, their whole life would kind of be turned upside down, in that pivotal time of being, 17, 18, but it really forced me to how was I going to respond in that? And so I hunkered in. I was like, okay, San Diego State, I can get, grants to go there. It's paid for, gives me 2 years to figure out how to pay for USC, got to San Diego State. I only took classes that could transfer to USC because I also wasn't trying to get there and be behind. So I took Asian art, things that I would never take because that was the only thing that transferred over. And, but it was so back to that. It was cool pressure. It was fun stress. And I think, leaving out the details of some of that stuff in high school that happened, it was that was real stress, and this was fun stress, pursuing my goals and pursuing my dreams, and knowing that I was capable of doing that, was really, really empowering. And so kind of all that stuff led me to I think have that hunger inside of me to be and then to the point of even starting this business in this next chapter, it's to the point do I question it? Sure, but you have to look back at your track record. I'm like, well, you've
figured it out
every
amazing,
other time.
right?
So what would be different? Actually, you're more prepared than you've ever been.
Right.
And I think that's the fun thing about as you get older is you have to look back, and to your point of betting on yourself, I have bet on myself since I was really little, but really at that time at 17, I bet on myself to go off to college and to figure it out. And every step I figured it out. So I'm what about this would be any different? And I think that's what gives me the confidence and the peace to feel this is also fun stress. Don't get me wrong, it's hard, it's gonna be exhausting. I will be crying probably tomorrow at some point. I don't know. But it's motivating. Right. And I think when you go through hard things in your life, not having a support system and parents, when you, by the time, because my dad wasn't around and stuff, so not having that safety net, you really do have to bet on yourself, because if it doesn't freaking work out, it's there's no one to go to. And I think what I learned early on, though, I actually don't mind working. So I'm worst case scenario, you work as a barista at Starbucks.
You just go get a job.
Go get a job.
Figure it out.
Go get a job, and you will keep figuring it out. And I think once you have that ability to be like, oh, I'm capable of that. Like, and that becomes a little less scary, you know?
But it's so cool too, because your vision didn't change. Your
I know.
path might have changed, but your vision and your dream didn't change. So you were able to kind of navigate that little sidestep and still get where you want to go. I think a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, my world's ending. I can't do what I want. It's like, no, like, by God, I'm going to get there. And I might have to go 8 different stops, but I'm going to get there. And then the sun kept coming up. Yeah. You kept making accomplishments and achieving what you wanted. And you're like, okay, it might take 2 steps back, but now I'm a step forward. And I think sometimes, especially young people, forget that it's okay to fail. I even struggle with it, where I'm like, gosh, if I fail and this whole thing blows up, is everyone going to be like, oh, we knew she couldn't do it? But those aren't my people. If they're saying that, those aren't my people. And I have to be like, okay, cool. Like, it didn't work, or we're going to have to shift and pivot.
What does failure look like? I think that's why I started asking myself, reframing failure.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I saw somewhere someone said that their dad raised them as little kids, like every day after school, they had to come back and give examples of how they failed that day.
Oh, wow.
And he started to kind of, reframe this idea of failing, almost like it was good to fail and stuff. And I thought that was a really interesting, kind of way to,
look at
it from an early age. Is like, instead of talking like, what successes did you have, to like, no, how did you fail today? And like, oh, look, you came back, you went to school again the next day, and it built this like, this grit in you that like, oh, look, I've failed
I've tried to look at things, and I've made like a really conscious, intentional effort of, instead of saying like, this is what went wrong, I try and frame it in my mind and even verbalize like, here's an opportunity for it to be better. Right? So it's the same thing, but the way that feels and the manifestation of that is like, okay, I have an opportunity here, or they have an opportunity to be a better person. I'm not going to tell you you're a bad person, but you have a really big opportunity to be a better person.
Right.
I'm saying the same thing. It just sounds a little nicer, and it gives you a choice to make that, not me. But I think it's so important because, there's so much pressure, I think, too, on women of just like, get it right early. And it's like, you know what, if you don't get it right, try again, do it different. I'm a big believer in no doesn't mean no. It just means not right now. And you have to be okay. And it's, I meet all these young women and you talk about it, you're like, I want to be her. The entire precipice of this show is because of what you described earlier in it, which is you saw someone and you said, I want to be her. And my whole thing is, who is her? Right? Who is that? And how did she get there? Because not one single person that I know on this earth has got it right 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I just don't think there is. I think that's what I even see in my students. They're looking for an answer to this thing of life, like the right answer. There's not
one.
Answer. But
today is this. Tomorrow is that.
I'm like, there's no answer. And I just think failing, to me, I just don't. Even if you were to literally blow up your life and like end up, bedridden, and you have to like rebuild your life, I don't even, honestly, wouldn't even consider that a failure. For me, a failure would almost be not doing things with integrity and doing things that are, against
or not trying
morals and everything.
Like if I got somewhere, like that to me is actual failure.
Right.
It's like doing things
you're failing
without
yourself.
Failing myself. And that to me is what failure looks like. But these other things, like, was my company as successful in the first year? Did it have to, did it collapse? I don't know. And I had to go do something else. Like that to me, I really have reframed it where that doesn't feel like failure. That's just more experience.
I love that. I'm going to steal that from you. I am. I'm stealing that today.
Failure, but failure to me is doing things with no integrity, against my moral compass, against my backbone. That to me would be, because it'd be selling out. And that to me would be the ultimate failure, not to sound like a bumper sticker, but
India Wright.
India Wright. This is my level of failing.
I don't know. Failure, I don't know. Maybe I've had to psychologically reframe failure to me as I go into this next thing. Otherwise, I would probably go like, am I failing? But I really do believe we should reframe failure, because I don't think that if you're actually trying, I do not think you can ever really fail.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't think that. But you do things with not integrity and not a moral compass, that to me is nothing.
But then you can't lead like that. That's the other thing too for me is like, I want to lead so that when I am done, there is this machine that keeps working with the same level of energy and excellence that I started it with, as opposed to like, if I leave, it just goes to shit. Okay, well then what did I do? I failed as a leader, I failed as a person, and I failed from somebody who like, I built something to just fall apart. It was built on me, not on what I was creating. And I think that is, when you look at people of like, I always say like, how did they create that? They don't lead because they have a billion followers. They lead because they're able to positively influence change and create a space for conversation that's a leader, not somebody who just has 18 people working for them.
Right.
Yeah, that's also about lifting your people up.
Yeah.
100%.
I think we always see that like difference between like leaders and bosses. It's
Yeah.
like the leaders lift people, that they lift their employees.
They want to see them
They
go.
want to see them exceed and
Right.
stuff. And they
That's
also,
amazing.
yes, they bring out their fullest potential. And I think that's why it takes, as someone who runs a company, it's hard to find those right people because you're like, I'm trying to get the best out of you and you ain't going there. So like, once again, either you jump off the train or I throw you off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's why everyone can't be a leader, and that's
Yeah.
back to the corporate structure is, I think always going to find itself in some type of disarray because the corporate structure is like, yes, as long as you just stay and you're a good foot soldier, you
Yeah.
rise. And then with
Exactly.
the rise, you get these opportunities to lead.
Yeah.
And then everyone is not a good leader. You can be
And you're
so
not
talented.
equipped to lead.
But yeah,
You
some
don't know how to
people-
lead.
It is a full-time job to lead.
Yeah.
No.
You
It
don't even
is.
end up doing your job. You end up just
People
leading.
management,
Yes.
people
Yeah.
management is like 90%
Every day
of a
it's like,
company.
I'm stuck in my garage.
Yep.
My cat died. I'm having a mental breakdown. My tooth cracked. It's like
Oh my gosh. Endless.
I mean,
Yeah.
And you have to be
Okay,
like
cool.
humanizing and you have
Yeah.
to be, all these things. But no, I mean, not everyone is born to be a leader, and that is the truth. And it's like, just once again, know yourself.
Yeah.
Just like be aware. I can get down with anyone as long as they're aware.
Yeah.
If you're
Right.
aware, if you're all this and that's not me, but you're aware, we'll
Love it.
get
Love it,
along
yeah.
forever because as long as you're aware, just know yourself. So if you're not a leader and you don't have any interest to get better at being a leader, then don't be a leader.
Yeah, just
You're
don't
not
show
doing
up.
anyone a service.
Oh, my final question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody who wants to have your role one day? They want to be director, producer, storyteller. They want to be India Wright. What would you tell that young
Well, I
girl?
don't think anyone should try to be anyone else besides themselves.
Love that.
But yeah, to that point, I do think it goes back to knowing yourself. I think talking about that gut feeling, I think, instead of worrying so much about the end goal or like where, like, I want to be,
Right.
CEO, I want to be, a film producer, director. I think you need to start thinking about, like, I think it needs to be deeper. What is your passion? What is it that's going, because you need to find your why, because you are going to be challenged along the way. And the only reason you keep going is because there's something deeper there than just a job title or just a salary or a pension. So my advice would be like, get to know yourself and figure out what your backbone is. I think I see a lot of times like, you need to be assertive, but you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be assertive. Be yourself. Figure out how you be assertive by being yourself. So, but figure that out. Like, what is your moral compass? What are you going to stand on? Because you will be tested time and time again, whether professionally, personally, like through life. And it's like, if you don't know your North Star or your backbone, like you don't know what that is, you're going to crumble. And so I would say figuring out who you are and really getting deeper, like what is your mission statement? Find that out, and then what are the steps that get you to this goal? And then go forth knowing that it will become a jungle gym.
Right.
And you will be tested, but you have this backbone and this mission statement and this purpose that allows you to wake up again when the sun rises and keep going.
I think it's also, just to compound what she's saying, is just have people around you that encourage you to be yourself, but ask you to be better every day. Like if the people in your circle are not applauding you, cheering you, and also saying, that's not what you signed up for, you're getting a little sideways, like the people that keep you accountable, I think is so important, because it's so easy to get wrapped up, especially in sports, of just yes. I find it refreshing when someone's like, okay, unpack that for me.
Yeah.
Break that down for me. I want you to if you feel that way, help me understand it. As opposed to just like, yeah, sure, go. Yeah. And then you're left like, who let me do that? And who said that was a good idea? And what?
And I do think it's getting better for women. I will say I feel very fortunate the time I came into this industry. No, well, it's not easy. It will not continue to be easy, but I got lucky. I came in with a group of women that I'm in their weddings. We are sisters. Like when one's out on the shoot crying that they think they're failing, they suck at their job. I'm on the other end, like at home, like cooking my pasta. I'm like, you're going to kick ass. You're the smartest person. Oh my God, look at all your work. And then, and then a week later, I'm the one in the field like, and she's like, India, you're badass, you're blah, blah. And
you
so
got
to that point of like support system, it's like, and that's what I tell people, it's like, this is such a small industry. Like whether you work in football, basketball, networks, whatever, anywhere, you guys, there's so much intersectionality.
Yeah.
And it is so much more fun to do it alongside people that you respect, and you like. And so I really know it's cliche, but you are only competing with yourself. Well, if I don't get somewhere, it's because I didn't get myself there. It's not because you stood in my way or you stood in that way.
Yeah.
Or Max back there stood in my way. So not Max. It's like, no, so that's why I think if you start to realize you're only competing with yourself, like you really do.
Right.
You might as well make this fun and create a community of people that you support and you hold accountable and stuff. But I feel more than ever, women are supporting each other. And no, it's not perfect. And you know the ones that are, you can tell real quickly. You're like, okay,
Yep.
stay over here,
Yep.
you know, and that's their prerogative. And who knows? I'm a big believer. We don't know. Everyone's a reason, some way, because of something.
Right.
And that's for them to figure out and navigate. But I am like, I feel very fortunate to have so many amazing women in this industry, but really in my life that are such supporters of me. And yes, when I'm having a bad day, or yes, my period is coming in hot and I need to be, and they're like, they're not like, yeah, support me. And I do think that is so important, is to find your community of people. And yeah, whether it's your actual family, but your work family even, like, find your people that, you know, because it's like, it is hard and it's easier to go through hard times with good people. And I found that.
I love that. I've loved having you on. We could just be here all day.
I know,
She
like,
should come back for sweatpant night.
We're going to get back.
Yeah, you can go back. Come back for sweatpant night next time.
Oh yeah, Arizona.
We're gonna have sweatpant night.
No, thank you, ladies, so much for having me. And no, seriously, it does matter. I hope you guys know that every show you do, like you said, if only one person listens, no, you guys are making a positive change, and I think that is so important.
I love it. You'll have to have your class listen and give us some feedback.
You have to you both come in and speak.
Oh, I love it. That would be
It's
awesome.
heavily a guest speaker class. Like I said, it's about networking and meeting people. So
I love
it's a 3.5
it.
hour class. So.
Oh, good.
She's like,
oh,
please.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So come
Seriously, let's find a time.
Next spring is Wednesday, 6 to 9:30.
Oh, I love. So we could film. Actually, we could film one day and then come up from filming.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
because
that
they
would be
also, they're very green. A lot of them want to get into podcasting. They want but it's all about networking and meeting. All the different avenues to
of
get
it.
in,
Yeah.
get into it. So definitely
I
want to
love
have
it.
you ladies out. But
All right.
thank you.
Shout out USC. Okay.
Yeah,
we're
go
coming.
Trojans.
You're wearing blue and blue, but it's okay.
Okay, I'll change. For you, I'll change.
No,
Usually
it's
she
a
wears
beautiful
blue.
color on
It
you.
is so pretty.
She wears blue. We're usually
Yeah.
like
Opposite. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're usually
well,
wearing
we're
pink.
still in this world of
Yeah.
like a gender reveal. That's what I
Yeah.
keep saying to her. Every version
yeah.
of us is blue and pink. I swear to God, go back and look through all the
Yeah.
shows.
I feel like I've seen purple, and I was like, I didn't have time to get an outfit.
But it was just funny because I'm like, I'm wearing blue today, and she's like, normally I wear blue. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, we're switching today.
Yeah,
I
which is
love
nice.
it.
I'm always repping the blue, and you're always repping pink. So
Well, it works for both of you.
thank you.
Yes.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
both.
All right, Megan, that honestly could have gone on for
I know.
ever and ever. It's so awesome just seeing and hearing her story, just her path through NFL Network, how she shifted schools, went from San Diego State straight to USC, never losing her vision, just altered her path to get there.
Yeah.
So inspiring.
And that's who she is. Like, that's who she's always been. Like, when I saw her at NFL Network, I was like, oh my gosh, like, who is this woman? She is incredible. She's a boss. Like, I want to be like her, basically. And it's just been really cool, like, getting to know her story, how much success she's had, and how big she is in empowering women. I think that is so special. I think it's so important for women, in the sports field to be celebrating other women. So she's great. Love her. She, is a mentor to me, but she's also become such a good friend. And she was great. I loved having her on.
I love how it just took like a 360 approach of she saw someone on TV that she wanted to become, and you saw that in her. And so when you look at the universe and what it gives, it just keeps on giving it. And that's why we do the show, because someone's watching this and wants to be Megan, and this is Megan. Okay.
Sure.
But honestly, from one female CEO to another to her, it's just empowering to watch her take such responsibility in the leadership role in a company, but also to the people she works and serves with. It's honestly, I love hearing it, but I also love her talking about how she doesn't have it all figured out either, and she is just working through it day by day.
Yeah, we loved it. We loved having her on. We need to have her back when we have our hottie toddies.
We're gonna have hottie toddy night with her,
at
so
some
we can
point.
we can talk about Good American and Skims, how much we love them together.
We love them.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode. Thanks for spending your morning with us. We love you guys.
And this is her table.